Hello there guys, and welcome to every episode of The Simpsons Season 30 reviewed. That's right, the big 3-0. I am expecting this to be a typical HD season, but who knows? Maybe there will be a few surprises along the way. You guys have warned me about one political episode here in particular, but I know nothing of it, so I guess I will see for myself what it's about soon enough. Anyway, please support the video and the channel if you like the content, and also feel free to look at the Simpsons wiki in the description. With that said, I better get on with reviewing these episodes. Season 30, Episode 1, Bart's Not Dead. Bart takes a dare and ends up in hospital. To cover himself, he says he went to heaven and met Jesus. Christian producers offer the Simpsons a movie deal about his experience, but Bart can't deal with the guilt and comes clean to Marge about his lie. My trivia for this one is that Rotten Communication Wafers is a parody of Rotten Tomatoes. And my best moment was the jab at the Christian movie producers for not donating their profits to the church. The season premiere gets a 3 out of 5. It is weird that this season starts off in the same way the last one ended, with Bart nearly dying, and just like the episode Flanders Ladder, this was not treated as seriously as it should have been. I mean, Bart literally jumps off a dam because of a stupid dare. It seems a stretch that he would do something like that, and given how foolish it was, it should have probably been explored further. Once the episode gets past that though, there was some good stuff here. Bart pretending that he went to heaven was an interesting way to go, and I liked how an opportunistic Homer egged him on in order to secure the rights to a movie based on a fabricated story. Of course, Bart confessed in the end, and the whole thing came crashing down. This was mainly due to Lisa guilt-tripping him, although in fairness, she was not too annoying about it. She mostly just acted as the voice of reason, and tried to steer Bart in the right direction. The ending with the two of them on the roof was also quite nice, and reminded me of a few early episodes. There were a few decent jokes here too. I liked Homer's frustration having to work with Flanders, and as I said, I liked how the greed of a lot of movie producers was called out. And we also learned that Marge's father was missing a leg, which is kind of odd, but okay. A decent start to the season. Season 30, Episode 2, Heartbreak Hotel. Marge and Homer's marriage is tested when they travel to a tropical island to compete on Marge's favourite reality show. My trivia for this one is that The Amazing Place is a parody of the CBS show The Amazing Race, and my best moment was the blue-haired lawyer monitoring Marge and Homer's call to the kids. This one gets a 3 out of 5. This was a weird one. I mean, Homer and Marge having this long obsession with this reality show is believable, and Bart and Lisa actually getting him on it did provide some different opportunities. Once they got to the place, Homer and Marge being eliminated immediately was a decent twist, and after that it was just watching them lounge around the hotel. There was even a black and white parody scene jammed in there, which felt a little out of place, and towards the end things did fizzle out a bit, as we had a typical Homer and Marge marriage problems. But the ending of Marge screwing up, which meant everyone felt pity for Homer for a change, was decent. There were a few okay jokes here, mostly in the first half though. I liked Bart and Lisa pestering Marge to try out. It's nice to see the two of them acting like kids again. And as I said, I enjoyed the legal mumbo jumbo, getting in the way of the phone call. Overall, this is a hard rating to quantify, as it wasn't a standard episode really, but I think it had enough there to make it very watchable. Season 30, Episode 3, My Way or the Highway to Heaven. The citizens of Springfield remember their divine encounters and contemplate what merits they saw getting into heaven. My trivia for this one is that Lisa introduces her story as a princess not affiliated with Disney, unless we are now owned by Disney, referencing Disney's acquisition of 21st Century Fox. And my best moment was just seeing Ned's parents again. This one continues their 3 out of 5s to start the season. This started out okay with the nice Bob's Burgers couch gag, and using Flanders teaching Sunday school as an excuse to get into these religious tales. That was a nice idea. Even though this was technically a trilogy episode, it did not feel as much like one as its predecessors. I suppose that's a good thing really. In the first segment I enjoyed Ned's dad and his childlike aversion to rules, and I also liked the bit with a young Homer on a trampoline. Abe's line of, "I knew he could bounce, but I had no idea he could count," I actually found funny. The second segment of Marge's French stand-in, being an atheist, kind of just meandered along. The points made about religion were uninteresting, and this part was light on jokes too, the worst out of the three. The final part was better than the second, but weaker than the first. It was a bit cliche for Lisa to be the buzzkill, and decide that she doesn't want to live a life of opulence. But that said, the song was decent, as was the animation, in the sequence where she reached enlightenment. This episode never wowed me or anything, but it was a bit better than I was expecting. Season 30, Episode 4, Treehouse of Horror 29. The three short stories this year are Intrusion of the Potty Switchers, Multiplicity, and Geriatric Park. So my trivia for this one is that there are many real dinosaurs and reptiles featured in Geriatric Park. These include Tyrannosaurus Rex, Triceratops, Velociraptor, among many others. And my best moment here was the eating contest between Homer and Cthulhu. This year's Treehouse of Horror gets a 2 out of 5. Doing another Apple spoof in a Treehouse of Horror does not seem particularly exciting, and although these alien plans absorbing people had the potential to be interesting, the ending killed any of that potential dead. It was just so pointless to have them all start using the phones again. It meant the segment ended exactly how it started, which is not really what I want from a Treehouse of Horror. As far as the second segment goes, the premise here was quite literally better than the execution. Lisa executing people because she got an F was so trivial that it could have worked, only if the tables were turned on her in a funny way at the end. That is how these things usually work. Instead though, the ending to this had Bart begging to be spared, which Lisa agreed to, and that was it. She even justifies her actions by saying that sometimes women get pushed too far. Now I know we aren't supposed to take characterizations seriously in Halloween episodes, but if that's the case, why did this segment end like a normal episode? I just wanted an action-filled conclusion, damn it. As far as the final part goes, I got what I expected. I expected good animation and good designs of the characters as dinosaurs, and they delivered on that. That being said, the pacing was rather off. They took a bit too long setting up, and not long enough actually showing the dinosaurs off. That made the showdown between Lisa and Grandpa feel redundant, as not enough time was put into him wreaking havoc. This was not a particularly funny episode either, which ensures this gets the 2. The best bit here was actually none of the segments, it was the opening bit, with Homer getting into an eating contest with Cthulhu. That provided some good entertainment. Just a shame it only lasted for a minute or so. Season 30, Episode 5, Baby You Can't Drive My Car. A self-driving car company comes to Springfield, poaching all the power plant employees with promises of a fun work environment. A funny thing about this one is that Homer has been in a self-driving car before, in the episode Maximum Homer Drive. He drove Red Barkley's truck and discovered its auto-drive system. The best thing about this episode for me was all the satire on modern technology. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. The story here was cohesive, with Homer losing his job in a way which actually ended up tying in with his new one. The character stuff here also felt natural and believable. Whether it be Homer messing around in his driverless car, or simply just him and Marge having fun working together, it all made sense. And the ending where Homer and Marge joined forces with Burns and Smithers was great. It was also nice to actually see how Homer got his job back at the plant in the end. We don't usually get to see that, so it was a nice change. As I said though, my favourite thing here was the satire. It did the obvious stuff and pointed out how tech companies spy on people, but it also made some more subtle points about self-driving cars. It showed that they do have their positives, but at the same time it showed how they could essentially be programmed to push you to go to certain shops, or worse yet, restrict your access to certain places. There is definitely potential there for them to be misused, and it does once again beg the question, are we becoming overly reliant on technology? It's certainly thought-provoking, and is probably a debate that we will continue to have. As far as the comedy goes, this was not the funniest, but it did have a few okay jokes which solidified this as a 4, such as the second Alexa that Homer has, or Burns' interpretation of what LGBT stands for. Season 30, Episode 6, From Russia Without Love. On a mission to play pranks, Bart, Milhouse and Nelson get Mo a mail-order bride on the dark web. So this episode's production number is actually part of a tracking number for Mo's mail-order bride, and my best moment here was Kirk Van Houten as the DJ. Just look at him there, what a picture. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. This was a decent, watchable episode. I just don't have much to say about it. Mo getting a new brief love interest is nothing new, but I liked how they played on that. Mo not wanting to commit, in fear of another heartbreak, is kinda sad, but at the same time feels like a step forward for him. At least he's now showing some self-awareness of what he really wants. The ending where she is revealed to be a scam artist is a decent twist, especially as she tries to scam groundskeeper Willie for money right after. Yeah, good luck with that. That really would be like trying to get blood from a stone. I would say this episode was middle of the road in terms of jokes. It was nice seeing Herman again, and Kirk Van Houten as his cringy DJ was pretty funny. So yeah, this was fine, but not really a great one to review, because I struggled to expand much on what went on here. Season 30, Episode 7, Werking Mom. Marge wants a job and becomes a food storage container selling drag queen. Meanwhile, Lisa tries to make the world a better place. So this episode was actually dedicated to the memory of the Marvel Comics creator Stan Lee, who died 6 days before this episode aired. And he of course had been a guest star on the show a few times before. And the best thing here was simply Lisa's portrayal. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Well, given the main story here had the Simpsons tackling drag queens, I expected this to be a train wreck. But, while not being amazing, it did turn out better than I expected. They didn't try to make more out of this than it actually was. By that, I mean they managed to give a positive portrayal of the LGBT community without it coming across as having a message shoved down our throat. Instead, they just showed off Marge making some money and having a good time, while pretending to be a drag queen, and she was actually supported by the community for it. The ending to this does make it lose some points though. Not Homer in drag, that bit was silly but fine. What I'm referring to was a forced marriage crisis. There were so many directions they could have taken the story. Why did they have to choose the most played out one? Also, Marge getting mad at Homer felt a bit unnecessary. He didn't even do anything wrong, really. Marge was pretending to be a drag queen without telling him. If you are going to do that, you kind of have a duty to tell your partner about it, in my opinion. As far as Lisa's subplot goes, I really liked it. It was all about doing the simple things, just to help people out and brighten their day. Random acts of kindness are important in my opinion, and it was nice to see Lisa do them for purely selfless reasons. She often has some bigger goal in mind, but not here. She just enjoyed helping people, and that was some nice positive energy. The jokes here were average overall, but I did enjoy Marge's comeback to Helen. It's about time she got a taste of her own medicine. Overall, I did enjoy this one. However, the questionable marriage crisis bit stopped it from soaring to a 4. Season 30, Episode 8, Krusty the Clown. Homer finds his calling as a TV recapper, but his harsh grades cause a brawl with Krusty. After almost killing Homer, Krusty hides out at a circus and finds real happiness there. Something interesting I noticed about this one is that Krusty's fake clown name, Soggy the Clown, is similar to the Yu-Gi-Oh monster Saggy the Dark Clown. I don't know whether that was an intentional reference or not, but I like the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, so I'm going to pretend that it was. My best moment was Homer finding out the truth behind the TV show industry. This episode gets the second 4 out of 5 in a row. The main plot here was fairly standard. Well, after Krusty trying to murder Homer for giving him some bad reviews, that is. It was just nice seeing him happy, doing something different by embracing life as a circus clown. He actually enjoyed being an authentic clown who gets real applause, instead of being a purely made-for-TV product. Bart joining in on the fun was also a good way to include him in the story. The ending was not the best though. It was obvious that Krusty would not end up staying with the circus, and they never handled the breakup as well as they should have. As far as the subplot goes, I liked it quite a lot. We have already seen Homer as a food critic, so why not a TV critic? It fits him just as naturally. They managed to get a bit of good satire in, about a variety of things. They touch on how people can get overly analytical about TV shows and movies, and as someone who is sitting here reviewing this show, I feel a bit personally attacked, to be honest. It's all good though. Everyone has their own opinion about what a good use of their time is, so I'm happy to take jabs to reviewers that the episode gives out. The other thing satirized here was the TV industry itself. From TV companies to streaming networks. It's true that there is so many shows to watch nowadays, that it's not even that far-fetched to believe that most of them are not even shows at all. As far as some recappers and reviewers doing the bidding of these companies, either knowingly or unknowingly, I'm sure there's a lot of truth to that too. This episode was on the funny side too, which definitely gets it to a 4. I'll teach you to insult a thin-skinned Hollywood narcissist, and justifiable homicide were among the best moments. Season 30, Episode 9, Daddicus Finch. After Lisa and Homer start spending some quality time together, Bart feels neglected, so Marge tries to help Homer balance his attention between the kids. This episode's title is a reference to Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird, and both are heavily featured in the episode. My best moment was Homer calling out the shop's products and standing up for Lisa. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. This was definitely more of a character-focused episode than a humour-focused one, but it mostly accomplished what it set out to do. Lisa starting to look up to Homer and getting overly attached to him is something we have seen a few times before, but their scenes together were still nice, and they were certainly in character. It also helped that I liked Homer's speech. The products were not really appropriate for kids, and Homer did the right thing as a parent in calling them out. That sadly is a disturbing trend we are seeing at the minute in real life, so I was glad that the show seemed to take a stand against it. That being said, the episode seemed to get a bit bogged down, and never really went anywhere. Now listen, I'm all for some nice moments of Homer and Lisa bonding, but there needs to be some purpose in the end. This didn't have any though, and the Bart storyline didn't really add anything. In fairness to the episode, there were a few decent jokes, like Homer closing his eyes to go to sleep, then waking up at some random place. I also thought the overworked school counselor, who only gave each student 45 seconds, was a good one-off character. However, some of the gags were stretched out for too long, like the Duff group at the bus stop, and the TV scenes. There were also a few jabs at Donald Trump, which felt a bit out of place. I know it was all a rage to mock him at this point in time, but unless you are actually making a point, there is no need to shoehorn in references to him all the time. This was still a decent episode just for the character moments, but with a bit more refining, I feel it could have been something great. Season 30, Episode 10. 'Tis the 30th season. After a failed Black Friday shopping spree, Marge is determined to have a great Christmas. However, Homer and the kids surprise her with a vacation to a Florida resort. My trivia for this one is that the scene where Bart places Vice President heads in the manager's bed spoofs the horse head scene from the 1972 film The Godfather. And my best moment was Marge at the Black Friday sale. I just liked how she was such a fish out of water in that scenario. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Much like the last episode, there wasn't so much of a story here, as it was just a bunch of character stuff. I don't even say that as a negative. It's actually quite nice to see this show focus on the simple character interactions for a change. All that happens here is that to take some pressure off Marge, the Simpsons decide to spend Christmas elsewhere, so Homer books a crappy hotel resort for them. Then it's a bunch of scenes of them staying in a small hotel room and visiting the resort's attractions, which featured such wonders as a hall of vice presidents. Of course, this all became too much for the family, and after Bart manages to get their money back, they head back to Springfield. The ending at Moe's where he is serving Christmas dinner for the elderly and vulnerable was nice, and the message of Christmas being about family may be cliche, but it's also kind of true. There were not too many funny bits here, which does hold this back a bit. Marge trying to navigate her way through the shop on Black Friday was probably the best we got in that regard. Just a shame she got absolutely played by Gil though. Season 30, Episode 11, Mad About the Toy. Some toy green army men trigger Abe into a PTSD episode. Liz sends the family on a journey to Grandpa's past, to when he was a post-war toy model. My trivia for this one is that Homer sings Love and Marriage, which was the theme song for Married with Children. And the best moment here for me was Abe's TV interview. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. So this episode takes another look at things which happened in Abe's past. That guy sure has done a lot, hasn't he? The idea of toy soldiers of all things giving him PTSD was interesting at first, as that dark side of his past has always been well avoided by the show. However, the twist that his stress was because a gay photographer kissed him at a photo shoot was a bit underwhelming. I mean, they did the obvious thing and explored the attitudes that people like Abe had about homosexuality in the 1940s, which obviously weren't great by today's standards. However, at the same time, the guy was a bit out of order, kissing Abe out of the blue in the first place. That kind of thing probably should get you fired regardless of your sexuality. The whole thing at least led to the Simpsons family finally going to Texas though. It had been a long time coming, and they got a few decent jokes about their travels. The ending was okay. It was nice to see Abe try and look past his prejudice and make up with the guy, but the fact that he was still so obsessed with Abe so many years later was a bit creepy, to be honest. There was definitely quite a few ups and downs with this plot. The jokes were okay, a few went on a bit long, like Homer being mistaken for a crazy person, but there were also a few nice ones. I liked Grandpa saying that he already lost when Bart suggests they play the game of life. Bart open carrying his slingshot in Texas was also good, and Abe's insistence on getting the last word in on a talk show was great. That is just him in a nutshell. Season 30, Episode 12, The Girl on the Bus. Lisa spots a potential new best friend from the window of the bus. Once she meets her more cultured family, she decides to spend as much time with them as possible. So the couch gag here features Thanos from the Marvel Universe, disintegrating the Simpsons family, except for Maggie. And my best moment was Ned pretending to be Homer. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Indeed, this fits in with most episodes this season. It's not bad, and has the odd good moment, but never really does anything to truly stand out. Lisa getting a new friend is obviously nothing new, and there is nothing interesting about her family really. They just exist to be the opposite of Lisa's family. And the ending conflict doesn't actually lead to much. Lisa does do the right thing and admit that she lied, and they just go off to party in Bart's room? Yeah, that was just weird. Despite some of the character stuff being bland, there was stuff here to make it a decent watch. As I said, I like how Ned just on the spot was totally cool with pretending to be Lisa's dad. And Lisa saying, "Sideshow Mom," after Marge caught her leaving was funny. It was true as well, Marge had been a sideshow in the episode up until that point. Nothing more to say here. A decent episode. Season 30, Episode 13, I'm dancing as fast as I can. Marge gets upset when Homer watches a TV show without her, so Homer decides to get dance lessons to make it up to her. My fact about this one is that the show Odder Stuff is a parody of Stranger Things, and my best moment was the ending. Like clockwork, this episode gets another 3 out of 5. My first inkling here was that the conflict just being Marge getting mad at Homer for watching a show without her seemed a bit petty. However, once I thought about it a bit more, that is exactly the type of simple thing which couples can and do fight about in real life, so it does make sense in that regard. Homer learning to dance so he could give Marge a good time was a thoughtful gesture from him. I swear there was a similar plotline on the Flintstones as well, as I tried to remember back to when I watched that show. It does all pay off with a sweet ending too. I liked how it was actually played straight for a change. I usually like a joke being thrown in to cut the treacle, but on this occasion, it felt right to just let Homer and Marge have their happy moment dancing together. Bart's subplot of being in a contest at Krusty's store was a fun, breezy distraction from the more down-to-earth main plot. What can I say? Another solid enough episode, without being amazingly funny. Season 30, Episode 14. The clown stays in the picture. While on a podcast, Krusty tells the story of the time he was making a live-action film adaptation. Homer and Marge took part in making the movie as one of their early dates. My trivia for this one is that one of the movie posters at the studio is for Pope and a Half, a reference to the 1993 film Cop and a Half. And my best moment was the podcast guy and his setup. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. We have another Krusty episode, not long after the last, and this one was nowhere near as successful. The flashback part of this never really felt right. The timeline felt slightly off, and it's quite hard to believe that all of the well-known characters worked together on this movie as young adults. Also, of course, Krusty was a selfish jerk throughout. Of course, we're used to him being like that, but there needs to be some kind of logic to it. We are expected to be on his side about wanting the movie to be a success, but at the same time, he is out here trying to get Homer hurt or even killed. It just doesn't work that way, and the half-assed ending of him doing the right thing does not make up for it. To go along with the story and character problems, this was also quite boring. There was not a single funny joke really. If I am being forced into finding positives here, then I suppose the gag about the Bart leaking oil was decent, and Krusty on a podcast being used as a framing device for a flashback plot was pretty clever. The show had to touch on the podcast craze at some point, and it managed to capture the vibe of them pretty well. The unprofessional guy, with the make-do studio, was good. There is for sure a lot of those types about. Season 30, Episode 15, 101 Mitigations. After Homer steals comic book guy's car, he must prove his innocence in a court battle with him. So the episode title here is of course a reference to 101 Dalmatians, and my best moment was the edited video montage of people saying nice things about Homer. This one gets a 2 out of 5. Much like the last one, this episode didn't click for me. The bits at the start of Homer taking advantage of the fancy restaurant and the car mix-up were decent. However, the revelation that it was comic book guy's car felt a bit odd, and the conflict between him and Homer felt a bit lifeless. Mostly because Homer was the one in the wrong for joyriding in a car, but CBG was his same unlikable self, so I didn't want to side with anyone here really. The conclusion of comic book guy smashing Homer's keyring also felt a bit silly. I feel like he should be the type of person who would gladly take the bribe of a rare comic book over a symbolic gesture of making Homer feel what he felt, especially given that Homer didn't even seem that bothered about it being destroyed anyway. Another nitpick I have here is the use of Kumiko. It's like the writers knew she had to be present, given that she is a part of the show now, but they didn't include her in the events at all. She just stands awkwardly around without saying a word. I said in the episode she was introduced that I would keep an eye on how the show handles her and comic book guy. Well, so far it's been a massive disappointment. So much so that up until this point, they may as well not have made their relationship part of the canon. Hopefully that changes going forward, but I'm not holding my breath. The comedy here was below par. Marge talking with Mr. Guy, and Bart whispering to Homer, went on far too long. The only somewhat funny bit was how no one had anything nice to say about Homer, so Marge had to edit some clips together to make a totally pathetic video. Season 30, Episode 16, I Want You, She's So Heavy. After a romantic night ends in injury, Marge recovers by taking up kiteboarding, but Homer refuses to get involved. My trivia for this one is that this episode's title is the same as a Beatles song, and my best moment was, well, none. There wasn't really anything good here in my opinion, and that kind of gives away the rating. It's a 1 out of 5. There wasn't much here which worked for me. Obviously the story of Homer lazing around getting fat is nothing new, neither is the tacked on marriage problems at the end. I was just not invested in any of the moments between Homer and Marge, because it all felt like a watered down version of things they have been through dozens of times before. I think the writers knew that the premise here was stale, which is why they tried to spice it up with some weird choices. First there is Homer speaking to his imaginary hernia. There is a random, needless twist that Nigel is a Russian spy. These things are just odd, and just don't fit into the flow of the episode. It actually made me more disconnected from the story. As bad as that story was, the jokes were just as bad if not worse. Not a decent one among them. What we did get was drawn out scenes of Jimbo and Shauna kissing, and the annoying accent being used again and again. No doubt this was the worst of the season so far. Season 30, Episode 17, My Sports. Bart and his friends form a esports team and make it to the World Championships in Korea. However, Lisa drags Homer to a place which makes him reconsider. My trivia for this one was that this episode's UK premiere cut out Homer saying, "Oh my god, he's playing with himself" on the video game. And my best moment was Homer and Marge laughing at Lisa's claim that she will be bad. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. This was okay up until the halfway point, but then it kind of fell off a cliff. I was kind of enjoying some of the simple satire on modern gaming. Sure, The Simpsons was a bit late to the party on this, but they still captured the vibe with the pro gamer that Homer hires to teach Bart. I also like seeing some of the kids in a bigger role again, especially Krusty's daughter, as we've not seen her in ages. There was even a few nice jokes earlier on, like Lenny falling down the stairs, and how Marge and Homer burst out laughing. at the mere suggestion from Lisa that she could tear up her homework. However, the good bits swiftly end. Lisa ends up hijacking the story by throwing a tantrum to go to Korea with them, and ends up taking Homer to a Buddhist temple to try and prove a point to him. Apparently it works, as Homer, in his new state of zen, decides that wanting to be competitive is foolish. So he shuts down the power on Bart's game tournament, ending Bart's hopes, just as he was about to win not only the game, but also a huge sum of money. Now, the idea here was to have Lisa teach Homer a lesson about pushing Bart too far, and neglecting her in the process. On paper that seems fine, but there was one problem with it. Bart was never actually shown being unhappy. On the contrary, he was enjoying his gaming, and was having a lot of success doing it. If there had been even some hint that Homer was forcing him into doing something that he didn't want to do, then this ending would have worked. But the way it is presented makes Homer and Lisa both look unlikable, because they are punishing Bart for doing nothing wrong. If you want to punish Homer, then fair enough, but don't ruin Bart's fun in the process. So yeah, this episode had potential, but they kind of butchered the character arcs, which left a bad taste in the mouth. Season 30, Episode 18, Bart vs. Itchy and Scratchy. After Krusty releases an all-female reboot of Itchy and Scratchy, Bart and his friends boycott the show. However, Bart soon joins an all-girl protest group after getting caught liking the show. My trivia for this one is that Bossy Riot is a spoof of a Russian feminist protest punk rock group. I would say their name, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for this particular video, so I won't. The best moment here for me was Homer's over the top laughing at Bart. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. So this episode was certainly something. I know people have strong opinions about it, and given the plotline that's hardly surprising. It wasn't actually quite as bad as I thought it would be. I mean, it wasn't good, it just wasn't that bad. At least it was actually tackling a currently relevant issue, in the form of all the reboots nowadays, in the name of diversity. Also, the actual concept of Bart teaming up with these feminist types to take on his friends in the Boys' Rights Association, that was alright. It's not that unbelievable that Bart would like the female Itchy and Scratchy, and him being a vandal is kind of natural for him to some extent. The jokes were also fine in this one. I liked how uninterested Krusty was at KrustyCon. Homer laughing at Bart, that seemed like something he would do in a classic era, calling him a jerk and such. And the pranks Bossy Riot pull were all somewhat entertaining. What lets this down a bit is the fact that they never really committed to anything. At times they joke about modern feminism being a bit toxic, yet at others they are portrayed sympathetically, and even though they're being vandals, they're doing it for the right reasons. Now, it's one thing being nuanced and giving both sides of the argument, but it's another when it all comes across as a bit wishy-washy. I mean, it's not like the group's actions seem to be helping women's rights in any way. As far as I can tell, they seem to be just going around pranking random men, and them wanting to destroy all the previous Itchy and Scratchies is not a positive thing surely. Even if you don't like history, trying to delete it just makes you look lame. As far as the ending scene of Bart spray painting the patriarchy as a wiener, no doubt that rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. As far as my personal opinion, I'm not a fan of third wave feminism, and I think the patriarchy nowadays is massively overblown. If women even have any disadvantage at all, I think you can make an argument either way on that. Despite my personal opinion on these issues though, I'm not going to be a hypocrite, like a lot of people who are supposedly anti-woke, anti-SJW and that type of thing, but then go and get triggered by the ending of a cartoon episode. I'm certainly not gonna do that. I mean, I'll happily criticize this ending, sure. It's a touch silly and heavy-handed, and Bart is probably not the right one to be delivering this message. But it's no secret that the people behind this show are more on the liberal left-wing side of the aisle, so I'm certainly not gonna get offended about it. I mean, it's fine. Down with the patriarchy and such. To sum this one up, it had a lot of problems, but it never felt truly disastrous to me, and there was a few decent moments, enough for me to give it at least a 2, maybe not even far off a 3. Season 30, Episode 19, Girls in the Band. The director of the capital city Philharmonic takes notice of Lisa's talent and convinces her to join them. However, this puts strain on the family who struggle to support her. So a relevant fact about this episode is that it is the first one to be written by Nancy Cartwright, and my best moment was the ending. So did I like Nancy's first attempt at writing? Yes, I did. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I mean, the basic story she came up with is nothing new, with the family having to sacrifice things for Lisa, but a good job was done with supplementing that story with bits that are new. For a start, I like that we got to see a bit more of Mr. Largo. We got to see why he is the bitter person he is, and how that affects his life. We also got to see his boyfriend for the first time. He had been hinted at several times in the past. I also found the Lisa stuff quite believable. At first glance, the situation looked similar to Lisa's pony. However, sacrificing for Lisa's potential music career is a lot more meaningful than just letting her have a pony. Let's be realistic about it. So I enjoyed that side of things. Seeing Lisa actually take inspiration from the drill sergeant-esque bandleader, instead of feeling sorry for herself, was also a strong step from her. The ending, while fairly predictable, was also fairly sweet. The banter in the car, on the way home, after Lisa gave it all up, was a nice way to end. As far as the jokes and moments go, there were a few nice ones. Grandpa's story about the Grim Reaper being the ticket out of Germany was one. I also enjoyed Homer and Marge talking about Breaking Bad. The episode was not perfect though. The Shining parody felt a bit tired, and also out of place. And Bart's scenes with the other siblings never added anything. Overall though, it was still an enjoyable watch. Season 30, Episode 20. I'm just a girl who can't say dough. Marge, armed with Lisa's script, becomes director of Springfield's local theatre. Meanwhile, Homer joins a baby class with Maggie, where he takes a liking to the supervisor Chloe. My trivia for this one is that the video of the song White Wine Spritzer by the metal band Oakley Dokley is played, and my best moment was Chief Wiggum leaving Lou with the prop gun instead of the real one. I gave this one a 1 out of 5. Bland. This episode was just so bland. I didn't really care about Marge and her play, as that premise has been done better before. The director guy who kept showing up was just annoying. And the ending of Frink being the man to save the day felt very rushed. The subplot was no better. Homer going to this Daddy and Me class with Maggie just to ogle at the dance instructor was a bit iffy. It would be one thing if it was played for laughs, but no laughs were even attempted. The episode just presents this situation as it is and moves on. I have so little to say about this. It just treads old ground, with no jokes along the way. It just fills me with total apathy, and those are the worst kind of episodes. Season 30, Episode 21, Doe, Canada. When the Simpson family go to Niagara Falls, Lisa goes over the falls, and is mistakenly given asylum in Canada. When Marge goes to Canada for Lisa, they begin to reevaluate their life in America. My trivia for this one is that the title of this episode is a reference to the national anthem of Canada, Oh Canada, and my best moment was the return of Can You Take Us to Mount Splashmore? This one sadly gets another 1 out of 5. This was also quite dreadful. It reminded me of the Denmark travel episode last year, where they amble around the country making obvious references. Also, can a family please stop wanting to move to every single place they travel to? That's lost all meaning at this point. We all know they will have a change of heart at the end. As far as the political stuff goes, it was pretty lame. I'm not a fan of political stuff for the sake of it anyway. If you want to attempt to make a whole political episode and actually have a point, which you want to convey, then go for it. Otherwise, just don't bother. If you don't commit to it, you end up with half-assed jabs at Trump or Trudeau, and the same lines about the American healthcare system we've heard a million times before. This has a lot of the same problems as Bart vs Itchy and Scratchy, but even that one had more bite to it than this. The thing about Lisa falling over the falls was also too much of a suspension of disbelief, so that killed my interest right away. To compound this episode's problems, none of the jokes really landed for me. The Mount Splashmore nostalgia at the start was okay I guess, but that's all this episode had to offer. Season 30, Episode 22, Woohoo Dunnit. When Lisa's college fund goes missing, the documentary crime series, Deadline Springfield, comes to Springfield to try and solve the case. So, Dateline Springfield is a parody of the reality show Dateline NBC, and my best moment was Chief Wiggum and Lou simulating the dog getting his belly rubbed. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. This was another documentary style episode that the show does from time to time, and it usually does them well. They did get the basics right again here. The mystery was interesting enough, and I liked how they explored all of the family members. Homer's day was the best. I liked the absurd things he did. Licking all the pasta sauce from the walls was indeed a bit sick, as Lou described. The ending of it being Marge after all, who stole the money, was a decent twist that was not entirely predictable. Despite the fundamentals being there though, I just think this lacked a little energy. They took quite a long time getting from one documentary scene to another, and it was not filled with as many jokes as it could have been. As for the ones that were here, some again felt stale and reused, and some went on for too long, like Lisa playing the new saxophone. However, I did enjoy some of Grandpa's ramblings, and Chief Wiggum getting his belly rubbed by Lou I found funny. Overall, this was an interesting idea that was only average in quality. Season 30, Episode 23, Crystal Blue-Haired Persuasion. As the Simpson family cannot afford Bart's ADD medication, Marge tries out some healing crystals as a cheaper solution. They seem to work, so she soon starts selling them to other people. My trivia for this one is that some of the books Homer's book club read include A Confederate of Dunces, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. My best moment was the Crystal Fantasy with Homer and Marge. So the season finale gets a 3 out of 5. This started out with some promise. These crystals, which supposedly have magical powers, was an interesting thing to introduce to the story. Marge making a business out of them was fair enough, I thought. I mean, if people believe in them, why not? Of course, the way they were being sold kind of falls under alternative medicine, and it was obvious that people's turn up in fortunes after buying the crystals would all turn out to be coincidences. Still, it was nice to see Marge raking it in for a while, until like all the previous times she opened a business, she ends up closing it down. At least she went out on her own terms this time though. The stuff not focused on Marge was not as good. Bart's way of cheating on his tests with the crystals felt like a lot more work than just cheating in a more conventional way. Also, I am getting a bit tired of them always using Lisa to try and tear Bart down in everything he does. Sure, sometimes Bart is in the wrong, like he is here for cheating. However, when most episodes always have Lisa sniffing around whenever Bart achieves success, it makes her look a bit bitter and paranoid. Like, just let him have some fun for God's sake. Anyway, that's a more general criticism of the show as a whole. I just thought I would mention it, as this is the season finale. The jokes and moments here were a mixed bag. Some long drawn out ones again, like Cletus with the gun, and Bart's side effects. But I did like Marge getting her mum and sisters to mess with her competition. And the fantasy sequence has some great imagery and animation. A fine enough way to end the season. So that's the season 30 episodes done. And here is a summary of the season. The overall season average score was a 2.65. My 5 least favourite episodes was as follows. 101 Mitigations at 5, The Clown Stays in the Picture at 4, Doe Canada at 3, I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say Doe at 2, and even though there wasn't a lot in it, I Want You, She's So Heavy, I found just to be a little worse. My top 5 again was pretty lackluster. It only featured 3 4-rated episodes, and none of them were that brilliant, but I'll read you them out anyway. Working Mom was at 5, Woohoo Dunnit was at 4, Krusty the Clown was at 3, Girls in a Band was at 2, and Baby You Can't Drive My Car was just about number 1. So, what do I think of this season? I think it was fairly similar to the last in the end, not particularly enjoyable, and also quite forgettable. However, it was going reasonably well up until the halfway point. Most of the episodes were rated as a 3, and it was hovering around the 3 rating overall. That kind of got my hopes up, as had it kept up that pace, it would have been the best season since around 19 or 20. Sadly though, it did regress back to the mean, with a pretty disastrous second half of the season. Once again, I don't really have anything to shout about in terms of the best episodes, which is a shame because it makes it hard to point to something and really recommend it as something you should go out of your way to see. There were also 3 1 out of 5s towards the end of the season too. When you have as many 1s as you do 4s or Bella, you know you're kind of in trouble. As far as the characters this season go, it was frustrating again with Bart. He was allowed to have a bit more success this time around, but it never ends well for him. Whether it be Lisa getting involved with his business, or Homer shutting down his chance of being a pro gamer, in the most extreme example. I wish they would just let him have a truly happy ending for once. With the other family members, it was mostly more of the same, but at least they toned down the marriage crisis plotlines a bit. Even in episodes which featured them, they were thankfully made a secondary part, instead of being centered around them. As for side characters, Krusty is a big winner here. He gets 2 spotlight episodes early on, as well as numerous other appearances throughout the season. For the most part though, this season played it safe, much like 29. I really hope they break out of this typical HD season mold at some point. We are due a season which I don't rate as bad, however there is only 3 seasons until I'm caught up, so I'm not holding my breath. Well, I guess there is 4 if you count the one currently going on, but whatever. I will get to them all eventually. That is all for this particular one though. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. And I want to thank all of you who are still watching for continuing to support this series. It's you lot that have given me the motivation I needed to push on with it. On that bombshell, I'm out of here. Take care, guys.